Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is the ASX and Sectors weekly chart analysis for the week ending 24th of April 2026. First chart is the S&P ASX 200 index, the XJO. This is the parent index for the Australian Stock Exchange. And prices pulled back this week to trade inside the 3-week range, consolidating to a large degree. The breakdown line in the background comes through here. The market may be coming back to test this for strength. You can see the market has consolidated below that level, found some strength, pushed higher, didn't show enough intent to continue higher above this bar's high, and has pulled back inside the range of this up bar to consolidate. Volume increased slightly but remained about average, and the market may spend some time just consolidating in this range here for a period, especially while there's uncertainty in the market. You'll see that uncertainty reflected in many of the charts as we move through. Highs of the range through here. You can see there's been some challenges to the highs, but no serious challenges. When the market did push higher here, supply was drawn out. Next bar was down immediately. And price is sort of up at that level now, just a little below it. It's pushed up to that level and now it's consolidating, attempting to absorb supply and perhaps just waiting for this uncertainty to clear to some degree to give clarity on which direction the market should be moving. This is the mid-cap sector. It's just slightly weaker than the parent index at the moment. Here's the breakdown line, which the parent index is trading above at the moment. You can see where the market found some strength over this period. And since then, the market's been consolidating sideways within the range of this 3-week up bar. Volumes are slightly below the average now. So there's no great intent being shown. The market's really just trading sideways in here, perhaps waiting for that uncertainty to clear somewhat and give some idea on direction. This is the small ordinary sector, and similar to the mid caps, you can see the market's trading below the breakdown line, which the parent index is trading above at the moment. This is the period of consolidation in the background. And this week the market's just trading right up in the highs of that range, just below the important level, the breakdown line in the background. Volume was slightly lower this week, but remained above the average. So there is some activity in this market. It actually appears the market would like to push higher and break through this breakdown line in the background. It'll require some more favourable trading conditions and perhaps some of the uncertainty to clear that's across the markets at the moment. But this market's looking a little stronger than the previous two at the moment. This is the ASX financial sector, easily the largest sector on the Australian Stock Exchange. Highs of the range come through here. You can see that when the market challenged those highs previously, supply was drawn out. This was a strong challenge. Look at the effort the market put in here. But spread narrowed and price came back in response. The market sold into the strength there. This market then spent a period of time in consolidation mode, absorbing supply. It then challenged the highs again. You can see that the volume was reduced this time. It did look like the market was going to test the highs of the range and perhaps respond, but this week prices come back to the relative safety found in the shadow of the highs of the range here. Volume reduced further as price pulled back below that level, which is telling you that it was demand that was most likely reduced this week, and selling pressure was reduced overall compared to the previous bar. So there just wasn't enough demand in the market to sustain the push higher. and prices just drifted lower in response. And that's also why the spread is a little wider. There just wasn't enough demand in the market to absorb the selling pressure that was produced this week. And price then had to stretch a little lower to find enough demand to satisfy the sellers in the market. I expect the market will attempt to move sideways now, probably pulled back as deeply as it needs to, perhaps a little deeper than it needed to, because it was stretching lower to find some buyers last week. You'll find the market will probably trade in this range here next week to a large degree. This is the ASX metals and mining sector, and it's pushed well above the breakdown line in the background. Here's the breakdown line. This is where strength came in. Price pushed up to it this week, pushed above it here, and the last 2 weeks have seen the market consolidating sideways. There wasn't enough strength to keep it going here, and the pullback in response has been quite narrow. Note that volume increased this week, but spread reduced as price pulled back. There was buyers in the market, holding the market up and buying the weakness that emerged. This market is looking like it would like to move higher in response, and it will likely do so if trading conditions are favourable next week. This is the ASX gold sector, and price is trading just below the breakdown line here. Price pushed up to the breakdown line, and since then it's trading in consolidation mode, effectively forming a bull flag to a large degree, as many of these markets are. It's pushed up to the important level. It's just consolidating at this level, possibly preparing for an attempt to push higher in response. Volume increased this week, and price pulled back just below the level, and it closed just a little below the lows of the previous bar, but comfortably within the range of the last up bar. This market may push higher. It'll depend to a large degree on the price of gold, as it always does, but it's certainly not looking particularly weak. It's looking more like it's consolidating in response to some strength being found down here. This is the ASX energy sector, and this market's been consolidating in response to quite a bit of strength that was found more recently. Price pushed up here, spent a little time in consolidation mode, pushed higher again, and now it's consolidating here, attempting to solidify and retain those gains. Price did test below the 3-week bars low here this week and recovered nicely to close in this little cluster here of closes, showing you that there is strength in the market. The market pulled back and easily recovered and closed adjacent to the previous 2 closes. Volume was just a little below the average, but that was genuine trading. It's pretty close to the average. You certainly wouldn't call that weak volume. So the market's pulled back and recovered, effectively testing the market for supply and testing the lows of the range. And it appears it was a successful test because the market recovered to close back adjacent to those previous closes. This market's likely preparing for a push higher again, or at least sideways at the worst. This is the ASX healthcare sector. We've been watching price trade sideways in response to a little strength that was seen on this bar, and price has broken down again this week, or it's at least threatening to break down, as it has done previously a number of times that we can see in the background. I do note that thrust may have shortened towards the downside this week. We'll see if there's further downside follow through in response. You may just get a pullback like this, or another widespread down bar. But right at this point in time, and the breakdown is not complete, the thrust may have shortened, showing you that the downtrend may be weakening, or the sellers may be becoming exhausted. So we'll keep an eye on that, because there was strength seen in this bar, and there was some consolidation sideways in response, and then the potential breakdown we've seen this week, the market threatening to break down this week, was a bit half-hearted, really, compared to some of these previous breakdowns we've seen in the background. So just watch this to see if price does recover quickly like this. We continue with this sideways pattern and this breakdown effectively fails. If there's further downside follow through in response, then it's just going to be a breakdown over multiple bars rather than a single bar. So we'll keep an eye on this and just see how it plays out. This is the ASX industrial sector. The last 2 weeks have traded within the range of the 3-week bar here. Breakdown lines going through there, like that. You can see where the market found some strength and is now consolidating sideways within this bar's range. The uncertainty across the market is playing out here. The market doesn't know which direction it should be going. Should it be breaking down, or should it be challenging the highs of the range, or this breakdown line in the background? So it's marking time or marching on the spot, trading sideways within this stronger up bars range, just waiting to see where it should be going. The uncertainty is showing right across the market, and this one's very clear. The market's really unsure what direction it should be taking at this point in time. This is the ASX consumer staples sector, and prices moved right up to the highs of the range this week. Here's the highs of the range. They're the longer term highs. They're the shorter term highs of the range. You can see the market's been showing some strength more recently. Even when it pulled back, it was a shallow pullback here, and prices pushed back up to the highs of the range. This is considered a defensive sector, so it's often supported when there is uncertainty in the market, and the sustained push higher over time just illustrates the uncertainty across the market at this point in time. And if we get a really serious challenge to those highs of the range and a breakout above, will just underline the uncertainty across the market at the moment. This is consumer discretionary, and it did find a little bit of strength down here, lows of the range through there. Then the market pushed higher here, and now it's consolidating within that range, just above the important level, which is only a minor level of what is probably an overall period of consolidation there. The market's traded inside the range of this up bar for the last 2 weeks, similar in some respects to the industrial sector we've just looked at. This market's uncertain as to its direction. Should it be showing intent and pushing higher? Breakdown line above is way up here. There's heaps of room to move. There shouldn't be a great deal of resistance across here. This is where the resistance will be found. Or should the market be breaking down and moving lower because there's going to be weakness in the markets in the future? The market's uncertain, and it's just marking time or marching on the spot and trading sideways, waiting for direction to become more clear. This is the ASX property sector, and it had found some strength. Breakdown lines up here. This is where the market found some strength from these 2 bars, pushed higher, but weakness has emerged this week. Price attempted to push higher, volume increased and was well above the average, but the close was poor. This market was sold into as the market pushed higher here, and it will almost certainly come back to some degree in an attempt to consolidate, and the amount of selling pressure that emerges will probably dictate to a large degree how deep the pullback is. But I would expect this market will pull back in response to some degree next week. It may just test for supply if the weakness is not overwhelming, or if there's a sustained sell-off, it'll be a far deeper pullback. That will only be reflected as time goes on next week. I do note this was a pretty strong volume that was traded last week. Spread narrowed and the close was poor. There was selling pressure emerge in this market this week, and the response will reflect that by pulling back for sure next week, at least to some degree. It's really unlikely that that's absorption and the price will attempt to push higher in response. That's really unlikely. I guess it's always possible. It's really unlikely. Back to the parent index just quickly. And after we're looking at all those other charts, you can clearly see here's the highs of the range. Strength was found down here and price has pushed higher, and now it's consolidating like this in response. Price is trading comfortably within the 3-week bar. Volume was about average this week, so it was genuine trading. There was a little bit of weakness emerge. Otherwise, price probably would have held on to the previous bar's low. But it's not looking overwhelmingly weak at this point in time. And I'd possibly expect some sort of dip lower and recovery next week. But with all the uncertainty across the markets at the moment, this market's trading in response to news and in response to overseas markets to a large degree. It's certainly not leading those markets at the moment. It's responding on a daily basis to what's happening around the world and what's happening on overseas markets to a large degree. So this market's very reactive at the moment, and it's certainly not proactive or a leader. Okay, thanks for your time. Back again next week. See ya.